Hey everyone, welcome back to TOFR Drivers, where today we are driving, finally, the brand new 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. And this is a bit of a special one for me because this has finally come full circle. I went out to Salt Lake City, Utah and watched them pull the cover off of this. I went to the reveal at the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum and, well, finally being able to drive this thing this week has been a treat, and my long wait has come to an end. I've put just over 100 miles on this, and I'm excited to show you guys what it is like to kind of live with this, commute in this Land Cruiser today on a day-to-day basis and in a real-world setting. So what are we doing today? Well, it is the middle of the week. It is time to go swap cars with the TOFR. So he has, funny enough, a Ranger Raptor press truck, even though he owns one. There's a press truck that we have this week. So I'm going to get a Ranger Raptor in exchange for the Land Cruiser. But I thought before I go and switch cars, I would take you guys all along with me on a drive and show you what this thing is all about. So what do we have here in front of us? Well, keen-eyed viewers will have noticed in the beginning that this is a first edition, and the way you can tell are these round headlights. Now, this is not the only way you can tell, because the base model Land Cruiser also comes with these, but if you see one that's all kitted out with the two-tone roof and these wheels and everything, you'll know that it isn't the base model 1958, and that if you see this combo with the round headlights, it is the first edition. So this is finished in a color that's either called sand or trail dust. A bit of a discrepancy between the Monroney and the glove box and the build configurator on the internet, but it's called one of those things, and it's a bit like a yellow tan with some nice flake in it. It's definitely an acquired taste, and a lot of manufacturers are kind of doing these weird like yellow tan colors lately. We have a contrast gray roof on this, and since this is the first edition, the top trim, the top dog, we've got a number of different dealer accessories on this as well. We have this roof rack, we have these Land Cruiser first edition special little mud flaps on here, and overall cost of this thing, this truck right in front of us, $76,800 and some odd dollars. The actual Land Cruiser base model, the 1958, starts at just under 56 grand, so this is $20,000 more expensive than the base model Land Cruiser. There is also a middle trim, which is called the Land Cruiser. So it's the Land Cruiser trim. And then this one, I imagine, will go away after this year since it is the first edition. But that's the kind of jumbled way that the trims work in my head for the new Land Cruiser. So we've got a bit to talk about, and you guys are already probably familiar with this thing. So if you just want to skip to the driving, I'll put a timestamp in the description for you. But this is totally new from the ground up. This is no longer the large platform Land Cruiser that we had in America for quite a long time. This is now what is called in other markets the Prado, or the 250. So we no longer have a V8 motor under the hood. This now has Toyota's 2.4 liter turbocharged hybrid iForce Max engine. In this configuration, makes 326 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque. So it is an absolute torque monster. It kind of drives like a diesel, and you'll see that once we are out on the road. This thing has full-time four-wheel drive, and it has an 8-speed automatic transmission. Just because this is now the smaller platform Land Cruiser does not mean it is not off-road capable. This has locking front and rear diffs. It has a center diff. It's got all kinds of different multi-terrain select modes. It has every off-road camera you could ever desire, and it even has Toyota's Trick crawl control system to sort of autonomously get you up and down embankments, slopes, hills, whatever you want to call it. I love, love, love the styling on this new Land Cruiser. I think its best angle is right here, the front. It gives great rear view mirror, and I am just thrilled with how this thing came out. When they pulled the sheet off this at the Land Cruiser Museum, I was just thrilled, and it was just really kind of special to be part of that experience of this whole new era of Land Cruiser. Another thing I want to talk about is we were driving the Lexus GX a couple of months ago. I did a living with the GX video, and we drove the base model GX, which I think was cheaper than this by like 10 grand. And while that is the same platform and it kind of looks the same from the outside, that has a V6. So we'll kind of talk about some of those differences once we are out on the road. But let's go ahead and start walking you around this thing. We'll try and make this pretty quick, and then we'll get out on the road. Typical Land Cruiser, we have the split folding, or rather opening glass that opens separate from the rest of the hatch. And one thing that I think is clever is your rear view camera is right here under the glass, which means you don't really have to worry about that getting dirty because the wiper wipes in front of the camera. So you don't have to get out and wipe off your camera if you are off-roading on the trails or anything for your rearview mirror, and that takes care of that. So that is quite clever, in my opinion. Land Cruiser can tow up to 6,000 pounds, which is a bit less than the outgoing trucks, but it still is enough, I would say, to get the job done. I mean, you can still pretty comfortably tow like a car trailer with a Miata on it or something along those lines. In the back, we find the reality of having a hybrid SUV like this, and that is the super high load surface. So if you're loading things in here and you're a bit short, you gotta kind of heave them up. But you know, we saw this in the back of the Sequoia, and in my opinion, it's even worse in the Sequoia because that has third row seats, so you get even less room. But in the Land Cruiser, I think it works out all right. And I think at my height, at 5'11", I could easily toss things back here with no problem. Of course, we have a power hatch. Another thing you get on the first edition are these rock sliders, which I quite like because when you're stepping in, they don't really get in the way like a side step would. And I suppose if you are strategic enough, you could kind of use it to leap into the Land Cruiser, but I think this is at a good enough height to where I can just kind of grab this handle and go butt first into the back seat of this thing. And where we find back here, a ton of room because we have a pretty high roof line in this thing. And you can see we get a little bit more room as the kind of contour of the roof goes up and aids the rear seat passengers in having just that much more headroom. We have a JBL sound system in this first edition. Everything comes standard in this, and there is not really much you can choose besides your color and some accessories. Fold down the armrest, a couple of extra cup holders there in the middle. We have our own climate control panel back here, which is always good to see in something this size, though now that I'm looking, where are the vents? Oh, they're up here. Okay, the vents are up here. So if you're someone that likes air on your face, you are in luck here in the Land Cruiser. Take a look at our situation up front. Pretty good room. Obviously, we have a hump here in the back, so if you have a passenger in the middle seat here, it's going to be a bit tight for them, but I think 4 adults could comfortably go on a road trip here in this new Land Cruiser. We'll pop the hood and take a look at this 2.4 liter turbo hybrid plucky little grunty powertrain that we have here. Pulling that hood switch is quite satisfying. It's funny, Toyota hasn't changed their little hood pulls in so long because the one on my 98 GS400 is very similar. And for your almost $80,000, you don't get hood struts, which is a little bit frustrating, and I was kind of annoyed when I opened this hood for the first time, but there could be some sort of reason for that. I don't see it. If I'm paying $80,000 for an SUV, I would like the hood to open without me having to insert a rod in there. Anyways, here is that 2.4 liter. You can see all of the hybrid tech in the back. Quite a bit of room for activity, of course. Like I said, the platform is shared with the Lexus GX, so they have to be able to fit a V6 twin turbo in here as well. But there's that little 4-cylinder in its spot, no engine cover or anything, just a big mess of hoses and wires, and definitely not the most attractive looking engine bay. Looks like this takes 0W20 oil. Oil is just getting thinner and thinner as we grow older and older. Shut that hood. The grill does move a bit when you shut the hood. We'll gloss over that for the time being. This is actually a full production SUV. This is not a prototype like a lot of these early Toyotas are that we get. So everything you see in this should be full production. For tires today, oh boy, for tires, we are running some Michelin LTX Trail in a squared 265 70R18 size. Now, I imagine this Land Cruiser has gone through it because this has 4,000 miles on it. It's a press car, truck, SUV, whatever you want to call it. And look at the state of these tires. These are chewed up at the edges like no other. So this thing has probably been to an outlet local to us that rhymes with bar and Criver. And, you know, they've probably just done their testing and they have worn these tires. But the result of that is, and I don't know if these are like this from the factory, is lots of noise. So we will show you that once we're out on the road. Enough talking, enough walking around this thing. Let's jump in. Let's start it up and get going on our little commute out to the Topher land. Driver gets a handle to pull themselves into this cabin as well. Passenger, everybody gets a handle, which I do appreciate. And not only do you get this handle to pull yourself in, you get the ocean handle up here as well. and that goes for all passengers. So lots of places to grab on in this if you're doing some extreme off-roading. Comes to life with our normal Toyota chime there. Fully customizable gauge cluster. We have the larger infotainment screen since this is the first edition. Volume knob is in a bit of an obscure location up here between the cluster and the infotainment, but I love that they even give you a volume knob to begin with. Here is our camera rearview mirror that I mentioned earlier. It works like an absolute treat. We have a moonroof on this first edition Land Cruiser, and I mean, everything is blocky, everything is physical in this. They haven't gone all new modern age with this. It does still feel proper Land Cruiser in here, which I do appreciate. And you even get this little trim piece over on the passenger side, which kind of looks like a bungee cord or like a strap or something. I don't know if they're trying to simulate like carbon fiber over here, but that's the only place I see it. It doesn't continue over to this side of the dash or any of the door panels. But you do get this cool first edition stamp on your door panels. You can see that a little bit better on that side, so I do like to see that touch. Wireless charger next to our gear shift. We have a number of different off-road modes in here. You can use this dial to select your drive modes if you are in the drive mode setting, or if you push, here I'll go back down to normal, if you push MTS, switches the functionality of this knob and you can go into dirt, sand, mud, or deep snow. We will be leaving it in auto today as we're only going to be driving this Land Cruiser on the street. One button below that is your crawl control. It's the kind of autonomous off-roading mode that I told you about earlier. Stick our infotainment screen here on the Toyota default map, which this is the Google system that you see in every other Toyota, which works pretty well. I've had a couple weird glitches with some of these systems over the past few Toyota loans that we've had, but this one in this particular Land Cruiser has been just fine. Into reverse, and you can see the car is in its proper exterior color. We've got the reverse camera, and you can see as we drive, these cameras are kind of able to make up and make out what is underneath the car. So a really nice camera system in this thing. And if you're gentle enough, you can set off in full EV. There you go. Well, after you give it like more than 10% throttle, the 2.4 liter does cut in. Oh, we're Land Cruiser, we're not slowing down for the speed bump. Come on. We have a fixed suspension in this. No adaptive dampers or air suspension or anything like that. If you want that system, you have to upgrade to the Lexus GX Overtrail to get that KDSS system. Very grunty, lots of low down torque with this iForce Max hybrid system here. Over my last 130 or so miles driving this thing, I think I've only revved it over 4,000 RPM a handful of times because you just don't need to. It's got so much torque, almost 500 pound-feet, that it's like a diesel. It only it revs itself to like 3,500 and that's it. And this four-cylinder doesn't really sound like anything. It's a little bit buzzy, it's a little grainy at the higher RPMs. You get the sense that they have kind of stepped it up as far as interior sound deadening goes, so you really don't hear much of anything. They're still trying to give you your nearly $80,000 worth of quietness in the cabin. Decently long gears with this 8-speed automatic, and probably my least favorite part of the driving experience here in the Land Cruiser. I've had a few missed shifts, I've had a few rough shifts, sometimes going from drive to reverse. This thing slams itself into gear and it's not the most graceful thing in the world. Again, giving this thing a bit of grace because it's got 4,000 journalist/YouTuber miles on it, so you don't know what this thing has seen. Especially a car like this that I guarantee has been off-roaded quite a bit and pretty hard. surprisingly, wind noise is not all that bad. A lot of what you get is noise from these Michelin tires, and we'll show you even more of that once we go around this corner. Let's put ourselves into sport mode, why not? It appears something's on fire over there. You guys see that? I don't know if that shows up on camera. Yeah, there it is. And flat out. So as demonstrated there, you can barely hear that 4-cylinder, and also as demonstrated, a lot of noise from these tires. I mean, come on, 30 miles an hour, 34, whatever I was going around there, and the tires are shrieking. I mean, you can go like 20 around a corner, and this thing is letting you know. It's like, you can play the tires like an instrument in this thing. It's hilarious. So obviously, you're not driving this thing like a race car, but genuinely, thank you, cross traffic alert. Genuinely, hold on. In just like day-to-day scenarios though, these tires are squealing around like every corner you go around. And maybe I just have a lead foot, maybe I'm driving this thing too fast, but I've gone around a couple corners at, no exaggeration, 20 to 25 miles an hour, and it's going, which means people, innocent bystanders on the sidewalk, think you're a maniac in this. But anyways, let's jump on the highway. We've done our little spirited section. You do have a manual mode with this thing as well. No paddle shifters, but you can shift it down here on the floor. Pretty decently reactive. Ooh, there's the new Santa Fe up there. This definitely mogs the Santa Fe, if I'm saying that right. I had a Gen Z in my comment section the other day. Teach me a new word, mogging. I would say that the Land Cruiser mogs the Santa Fe. Yes. Still kind of a neat design from that, though. I would say, though, another thing that it looks better than is the Lexus GX. I much prefer the styling of this Land Cruiser over the big, wide mouth of that Lexus GX. And overall styling, my vote goes to Toyota. But when it comes to powertrain, when it comes to that V6 in the GX, I almost lean towards preferring that. I think it's a little bit better suited for this platform. It's a little bit quicker, and for 90% of what you're doing, this 4-cylinder is grunty. It's nice for low-speed stuff, but those couple of situations where you need to get yourself out of your own way, make a pass on the highway, or pull into a busy intersection, you're gonna want that raw power from the GX, from that twin-turbo V6. So I'm not fully sold on this 4-cylinder. I definitely understand it, I get it, and I've grown to like it more as I've driven it this week, because I'll be honest with you guys, I did not like it at all the first day. I didn't really understand it. I hadn't quite bonded with the car yet and learned how to drive it. But now that I've kind of learned its little foibles and kind of understand how this thing drives, it does make a bit more sense now. And it makes sense in kind of the Land Cruiser philosophy of just the low down kind of torque and gruntiness and quietness of this. It does kind of fit the bill. Hanging out here on the highway, the Land Cruiser is a treat. We have all of the lane tracing and all of the assists that you get on any other Toyota. You can access that and activate it rather with the push of one button here on the right hand side of the steering wheel. And this will actually let you go for about 30 seconds before it yells at you to take the wheel. I'm actually shocked it's letting me do this with the camera on my face right now, because I tried doing it during the winding road drive and it yelled at me and told me to sit up because it couldn't see my eyes, because it was reading the camera as my eyes. So you can go quite a ways with this. Adaptive Cruise, we'll go ahead and we'll adjust our distance here to the closest. And then we're going to set this to a little bit of a higher speed. And then we'll go ahead and try and make a pass here on this Fusion. So pretty safe system. This is not going to accelerate for you until you are completely over and you've made your lane change. I like the systems that start to accelerate as soon as you put your turn signal on. Nice blind spot monitoring and overall really good visibility in this Land Cruiser. They've designed this new truck in such a way that it is still pretty airy and pretty open greenhouse sort of design here in this cabin. The mirrors are fantastic, very tall and wide, just kind of large overall mirrors. The rear view camera makes it easy to see out of the back, but even if you switch this to your normal camera, visibility is pretty decent. It's not the largest back window in the world, but blind spots, not too bad in this thing. I can see out of it at a pretty satisfactory level. And overall, you're able to set yourself up in this pretty nice. And this is one of those cars that just kind of makes you feel like the main character. You can have your arm on the top of the door panel, your left arm here on the center console, and you kind of just feel like you are on your way to the beach in a small town. You should have some surfboards sticking out of your separately opening rear window. It's just a cool car. You feel cool driving this, and there aren't many new cars on the market today that make you feel this way, especially SUVs and trucks in this class. I mean, this thing just, you genuinely, you feel like the main character in this car. That is the best way to sum it up. You feel like him. I'm him in this car. Okay, let's put ourselves into sport, take this exit ramp at, honestly, a pretty slow pace, because this thing is just going to howl like crazy going anything faster than 30. But let's stick it in here and see how it does. Ooh, a little too hot. 48's the limit. There was a limit, I have found it. Oh my goodness. Alrighty then. Use that torque. It's hysterical. Come on. At the end of the day, this thing is not meant to go around corners quickly. And I don't want to be like the typical journalist that's going out, oh, carving canyons in the Land Cruiser, and it's such a poor performance. That's not what it's for. End of story. Not what it's for. So, have to do that just to show it off, to, you know, be consistent with all the other cars. But I'm not for a second blaming this car for that, because that is not what it's for. Don't get me wrong. I know earlier I said that I prefer the GX V6, and I am still kind of sticking to that, but you have enough. 465 pound-feet of torque gets the job done for the platform in this Land Cruiser. Let's talk about another aspect unique to this from the GX, and that is the JBL sound system. Of course, every Toyota's high-end or optional sound system is a JBL these days, and they never really do it for me. I'm not ever a big fan of any of these systems, and the story's pretty much the same here in the Land Cruiser, and we'll let you listen to it here in just a second. But I want to first get out of the way that the JBL in this, the optional system in this, in my opinion, is not even as good as the base system that you get in the GX. So not even the Mark Levinson. The base sound system that you get in the GX, I think, outperforms this JBL, I believe, 14-speaker system. So let's listen to a couple of songs in here, and you guys can judge that for yourself. The settings in this car are as they come from the factory. I have not messed with any of the EQ. as you guys can hear there, by no means a bad performance. I just don't think that the JBLs ever really hit the spot. It's almost like they're just a little bit hollow, but you have decent power. But let's kind of wrap up our thoughts here on the highway performance of the GX. Well, I don't think we touched yet on elbow comfiness, so let's do that now. Fantastic. Squishy. I mean, I can't even feel the hard portion of this center armrest here. I'm going to set my cruise control back here, just set it a bit slower, chill in the right lane. This is very soft. Now, the left elbow rest for the door panel, it has a very thin layer of padding, but if you give it any more than just a very small amount of pressure on here, you can feel down to the hard plastic that's underneath. So your right elbow is going to be a bit comfier than your left elbow. I don't think that this is going to be a situation where you're in agony or anything like that, but it definitely could do to be just a bit softer. We talked about driving position. You sit super high up. I've got the seat all the way down, and I love these haunches here on the hood. Not only are they cool looking, but they also help you place this thing. If you're in a parking lot setting or something like that, you can easily figure out where the car is. And I like SUVs that are designed like that, especially when they start getting a bit bigger like this. Obviously not the biggest SUV in the world, but it's nice to be able to place it, and the hood design definitely helps in this. Seat comfort, nice. You've got a number of different adjustability items. You've got a manual little leg extension down here like a BMW sports seat. You also have quite a bit of lumbar in and out. It doesn't go up and down, but it comes out pretty far. All right, well, let's jump off the highway here. We'll get a little bit more city driving impressions, and then we'll wrap it up. I love the steering feel on this Land Cruiser, and I actually meant to touch on that earlier. Pretty light. Similar, if not identical, to the Lexus GX. If I had to make any sort of comparison, and this could be placebo, I would say this is just ever so slightly heavier, like 10%, but it is still, I mean, ultra light. It's just fantastic, and it's the steering weight that I like for a car that I'm daily driving. I don't like to put extra effort into steering around my daily drivers, and steering weight in this is nice. Weights up for you decently well when you're at higher speeds, but it is still pretty light and vague, as you guys saw on that entrance ramp here onto 275. This spray painted Cruise said no to the Altima. Come on, man, figure it out. See that? 20 miles an hour, squealing tire. Ride quality, fantastic. It's a bit of a firm ride, but any sort of body-on-frame SUV is going to behave like this. But I think for what they've had to work with, it's about as nice as you can get. It feels great. I've been cozy in this thing all week. It's just been nice to live with. Ingress, egress, driving position, seat, elbows, steering feel. Do I think it's a bit expensive? Yes, but there are a pretty good amount of standard options you get on the 1958 trim, including heated seats, heated steering wheel standard. You get a slightly smaller infotainment screen, but you get some really cool retro-looking cloth seats in that SUV that I do like. So if I were going to go for one of these, I would recommend you just go for the base model, stick a couple of options on it, and probably get yourself out the door for around $60,000. And I think that that's a bit more appropriate for the package that you're getting here. If you want to be that guy, if you want to be him with the first edition, obviously this is available for you, and the Land Cruiser trim will be available going forwards as well. But in my opinion, I think these round headlights look even better than the rectangular headlights that you get on the Land Cruiser trim. So let me know in the comments what you like. It was kind of a common debate at the launch event. Vent placement in here, pretty decent as well. You've got this circular vent over on the left, very easy to point at your face. These vents in the middle are a little bit harder to aim at yourself, but if you get them perfectly dialed in, they do okay. I think they're high up enough. Everything in this interior sits high enough to where you can get those pointed properly. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up our thoughts here on this brand new Toyota Land Cruiser. I have had a great few days with this, and it's taken me a bit to warm up to it just because I had already driven the Lexus GX and I was used to that SUV. But I think this Land Cruiser has a bit more personality in kind of every aspect. And it starts with just kind of the aura that you get, the aura that this car gives off, and just having that cool factor of simply having a Land Cruiser, the legacy behind this thing, and everything that these cars have been through, the continents that these cars have crossed. And it's just a cool thing to say, I drive a Land Cruiser. But even going beyond that, the way that they've been able to kind of maintain the plush driving feel, the driving experience you get with this, coming from that larger Land Cruiser that we had in the US that they had to kill off. And I think they killed it off in enough of a way that it didn't offend too many people. I mean, sound off in the comments if you're offended. But overall, I think they did it gracefully enough that this car was able to come out. It was able to slot into the segment just fine. But a bit of that personality also lies in this little 4-cylinder. I think it's got a bit more character than the V6 just because of the way that it kind of disguises itself as like a diesel, and the way that it's a little bit complex, 4-cylinder, turbo, hybrid. There's a lot going on, and you can have this thing set off in electric mode. You can have it bounce off the rev limiter in manual mode, you know, at 6,000 RPM. So you can still have fun. You can engage with this car, and overall, a nice experience. I'm a big fan of the Land Cruiser, and just kind of going to that launch event and getting to see all those classic trucks, it was a cool thing, and the Land Cruiser will always have a special place in my heart. One last thing we have to point out before we wrap up in this parking lot up here, and that is build quality. When I was driving that Lexus GX a few months ago, all I heard the entire time was rattle, rattle, bang, bang, crack, crack. The whole interior felt like it was about to fall apart in that thing. And this? Nothing. It's silent. And has a bit to do with this being a production vehicle, but still, I mean, let's applaud Toyota for putting this interior together in such a way that nothing rattles. That is a big deal, especially for a press car that's had some use, that's had some off-road abuse, and everything is still tight. It's in place, nothing rattles, nothing shakes, nothing is flimsy in here. Everything's blocky, it's tough. Materials feel pretty decent for what you get. I guess we probably also should touch on fuel economy. I've put about 150 miles on this car this week, and I am below half a tank. I've been seeing consistently under 20 mpg as I've been driving around. Don't think just because this is a hybrid 4-cylinder that you're going to be very efficient driving around in this thing. It is still a rolling brick, and it is most certainly not efficient. Make sure you guys comment anything below. Any questions about this Land Cruiser? Tires are making noise at 6 miles an hour there. We are in electric mode, backing up. Beautiful high-def cameras. I mean, that's a big perk of the Land Cruiser. Parking brake will automatically apply. Press our power button, shut it off. You'd be graced by the beauty of this first edition Land Cruiser. She is beauty, she is grace. Would love to have one of these someday, but the choice is so tough because the Land Cruiser has always been such a cool thing, and there's like no generation of Land Cruiser that I wouldn't own, so that's what makes it so hard. But this one is a worthy addition. It's not sacrilege, and at the end of the day, it is still a Land Cruiser, a Prado. It always has been, and that's just about it. So sound off in the comments, whatever you think. Any questions, let me know, but that's going to wrap it up for us today. This thing has been a good commuter. It's been great to live with this week, and I am overall very satisfied with what Toyota has put together. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.